Hello, Itai.
Hello, Dov. Rabbi there, I would say, yes.
Well, on another podcast, and what I want to dive
The
into,
two Jew crew,
the
yeah.
two Jew crew.
It's like Run DMC of 2023. Yeah.
Yes, and what I want to dive into is actually something quite interesting,
hmm
which I find interesting, and it may be a bit, uh, if you want to call it, what's that group that they rebellion. You know those people that shut down the roads.
And what the
Extinction
extinction
Rebellion,
of
something
yeah.
something like that. Okay, so
Okay.
I want to pose the following issue to you. This is the issue, right? Yesterday we
hmm
had the coronation, right? And also in the week's Torah portion, we spoke about the priests, right? And if you think about it, that they have a very so
You
there's
talk
something
about
Kohen,
Kohanim.
yeah, yeah,
Yeah, Kohanim, the priest in the temple,
the,
in the
the,
Holy
the
Temple. Maybe, yeah.
correct, correct.
Yeah.
Yes, and there was a whole section about who they're allowed to marry, who they're not allowed to marry, etc. What makes them holy? They should be
hmm
holy. Different laws about Kohanim and the high priest, the high Kohen, Kohen Gadol. And what's very interesting about that and the coronation is the fact that both of them didn't achieve anything. They didn't achieve it through merit. They were born into it.
Born
That
by
means
blood, yeah.
it was by blood,
Yes.
and actually, we know that there was a Levite who actually challenged Moses, and because he wanted to be a high priest, he wanted to be a priest, and he was like, "What? The fact that they were born into it,
hmm
that makes it, how does born, they didn't achieve anything." And if you look at throughout society as a whole, you know, there are a lot of people that there are a lot of people that um, if you look around and you take a glimpse, a lot of people that are in certain places financially or mainly financially at the moment, or in points in positions of power, yeah, that purely were there because
They had the connections. They born
they were
into
born
the
into it and certain things.
so-called what people love saying today privileges. Yes.
Yeah, yeah,
It's one of the
exactly.
most overused word, usually in the wrong context, by the way. But yeah,
What do you mean by in the wrong context?
people use privilege today for almost anything. It became one of these
Yeah, one of these controversial, like, yeah, no,
mimified
no. So
word.
exactly. So how do we reconcile this? We have on the one hand in Judaism we have an idea where yes, you are holy because you are born into a
Mhm.
holy. You don't achieve anything, okay. But then we have another person like either Moses or Joshua where they became who they were because they were through merit. So we see there's this constant, and I want to extend that also to the people who like who were explaining. Like if you look at all the writers, not all the writers, I don't know all the history. Maybe you can enlighten us on any of the history, but just things that we are mentioning, all writers and all painters and everybody from a certain century, which they were great because they had the opportunity to be great.
Back then, probably it was correct. Yes, probably it was much tougher on someone on an individual to indulge or to create a place for himself if he had to deal with the hardship of life. It was difficult. So probably anyone was most people were artists, came from certain
Writers,
writers, but
anybody in the arts,
yeah,
I would say.
they came
Do you
from
know anybody from the arts that came from destitute?
Uh, you know what? I cannot think at this moment about anyone who came from that. I know that most people today want to believe that the artist is usually coming from is very poor, is destitute, and is very miserable and constantly contemplating. It's something I think that came after,
Poverty.
yes, poverty, but it's something that came after Van Gogh. Van Gogh, I think, was mystified, and he created them. It's not necessarily him. I think it's the people who actually hyped him and promoted him. He was a very good painter. He belongs to the moderns anyway. We are talking about times before the moderns and before the French Revolution and many things that came after that and actually changed because of that. I mentioned before Jean Delacroix and also Theodore Géricault. and they belong to the times after the French Revolution, and you can see that it was a different perspective, a different view about things. That was the times of merit, of achieving something by merit. But I think, from what I understand, at least Delacroix, in my opinion, came from a comfortable background, and I believe that Jericho also. So, but I have to tell you that there was one guy. Again, we spoke last week about mathematicians. So one of the greatest mathematicians, and some people say, I don't have the authority to say it, but some great mathematicians said that he was the greatest of them all. Carl Friedrich Gauss.
He said it himself about himself.
No. The mathematicians of our day and time and age, they speak about it. He's one of the greatest anyway. Carl Friedrich Gauss, and he came from a fairly poor place. But because of his great talent, they managed to find a patron who helped him. So there was certain provision of patronship back then as well. So
But it's the exception of the rule.
no, it's the exception. Yeah, you can say it's the exception. It was very difficult. I think unless he improving such an incredible talent at such a young age and an ability, he would probably have drifted into the outskirts of, not necessarily outskirts of society. That's not the right description, but probably would never have achieved the achievements of a great mathematician who was pretty much at the elite of society. Yes,
This is
Carl Friedrich Gauss. So that's a man who actually managed to achieve what he achieved by talent, by merit, by having such an incredible brain, a unique, once in centuries, once in a millennium brain, probably.
yeah.
Especially when it comes to mathematics. So yeah, but in general, I think you're right about it. Yes.
So, but how do you reconcile? Because I'm trying to reconcile it. How do we reconcile that? On the one hand, from the Torah perspective, from spiritual perspective, yes, there are those that deserve things because of merit, because of birthright.
Birthright. This is the Torah. Look, when it
And
comes.
on the other hand,
okay.
And on the other hand, in a way, it's unfair.
Yes, but okay, so I have to tell you, you know about the Torah more than me. And I can tell you, but I'm very interested, and I did study. I think that when it comes to godly decisions, I'm very small to argue them. I don't feel that I have enough tools to argue against. If someone is born into a certain bloodline, then he can become a Kohen. I'm not a Kohen. I was thinking about it in the past, because I'm a person who wants to believe that I can do anything that I put my mind to. So why can't I not be a priest in the Holy Temple, assuming that now I lived in a time when the temple existed? But I also accept it. I will question it, but I do accept it eventually, because if I do believe God, so I have to understand this is part of a godly decision, that only certain people of certain bloodline are going to become priests. But I got to tell you something. It's very interesting what you're saying. I remember that in the past, I have to tell you that maybe in the beginning of the millennium, the second millennium, 2002, 2001, I started getting very interested in Formula One, motor racing. Remember, I told you, yeah, it's a great sport. And I told you about Jody Scheckter, South African Jewish champion, I think 78. He took the championship. That was just a conversation, one of our first conversations. Yeah. And I really love this sport. I love it so much that I even wrote a little, I call it a dictionary, just wrote about the champions and some other terms which are pretty popular in Formula One, and published it on the internet before I left to London. But the point I'm trying to make is that with time I started less and less. I still like it, but my main sport became boxing, because boxing is really an ultimate sport of merit. With Formula One, I found it to be too politicized. Boxing is politicized as well today. Yeah. But if you want to be a Formula One driver, you probably need to come from a certain background.
Correct. I absolutely agree.
You understand? So that made me.
I would say football's also one on merit.
Yes.
Football's one on merit. Cricket, I would say, is also you need to be in a certain school. You have to afford a certain school. And rugby also. In South Africa, and definitely over here, because it's mainly from the high society that, But yeah, you're right. I think boxing is one of those. Yeah.
And you know why, by the way, when I say merit, this is not just some sort of an ideology. I want to see the best talent. I want to see the greatest. You see, and for me, if you are limited because of your background and you cannot show that you are the greatest, then I'm not interested.
So the question, so therefore, when
but it's
was spiritual, yeah. Because the Kohanim needed things spiritual. It was a spiritual service. It was less about the way I see it, the actions that they did, even though they had to follow a certain action. That means if you had as far as I'm aware, that if you had let's say, a priest who was better at holding a bowl
Mhm.
than another priest, it doesn't mean that that priest will trump the other priest to hold the
Okay.
bowl. Do you understand? It just wouldn't happen. It's just, as far as I'm aware, could be wrong, but so therefore, it was something which was essentially which made them able to serve. It was like they had a certain, the fact they were born into the priesthood, the Kohanim,
Mhm.
it was that spiritual bloodline that allowed them. So it wasn't anything physical. It wasn't like something that they needed
They
to
did
achieve.
have this certain quality. It's not like
Correct, correct.
like
Obviously, they couldn't be blemished, etc. As we
it's not
understand,
like a
but
boxer that got a special
correct,
gifts, reflexes. Okay,
correct,
I understand. Yes.
correct,
I,
correct.
I understand, and I understand the point. But look, isn't it almost the same? Like, okay, you were born a man. I want to be a woman. You know,
Why?
we can say, I don't know, if you believe God created you as a man, and I start to say, well, I don't feel good as a man. I want to become a woman.
Right.
So it's also something that you can say, maybe, why do you have? Can you actually argue that? I mean, that's nothing to do with merit, but it's
Yeah.
actually a certain decision that came, if you believe God, that came from source that you don't have the mind to understand fully,
No,
even if you
I
even if
understand
you
because
battle,
it's an
if you
essential.
battling
It's
the
basically an
decision.
essential quality. It's an essential. Being a man or woman is something which is essential rather than actions.
Yeah, it's not the perfect analogy, but it's just about you've been born into something. You've
Yeah.
been born into certain condition. You
Correct.
cannot argue it. I could not go now to the times if I lived in the days of Solomon. I could not. Oh yeah, I want to serve in the temple. I'm
Mm,
sorry.
no, you're correct. But I just want to just on the point that you made. You said that therefore you want
Mhm.
that that people that when you what is it that you said about when it comes to
I want to see
any
the best
the
talent.
best talent.
I want to see the
So do you?
best.
So it could
The
be
human from
so
human
so
point
so
of
it could
view.
be possible. It could be possible that because of inequality, we're not getting the best talent.
Well, it's true that there might be people who are coming from such a terrible I mean, such an humble background, such poverty that they will never be able to express themselves. They
But
don't
they
have the
could be,
education.
but they could be absolutely more talented than Isaac Newton.
Possibly, and I'll tell you another thing. Here comes the story of the Polgar family. Comes relates to chess. Judith Polgar.
Hmm.
She is the highest rated female chess player in history. I think I told you about it. A Jewish Hungarian family. Her father, who was a psychologist, believed that geniuses are not born but made, and he decided to prove it, and he managed to prove it. So because he homeschooled,
Geniuses are not
born
born; they
but
are made.
yeah. By the way, I don't agree with that necessarily, but I tell you what he did was that he homeschooled his three daughters. I think that all of them became very good chess players, but one of his daughters became the greatest ever. And
Hmm.
she was actually great enough to be rated with a man, because usually it's often that women are not reaching such a high rating in chess as the men, as the super grandmasters.
Hmm.
And she even took her grandmastership. I think she took the title before Bobby Fischer when it comes to age wise.
Hmm.
So what I'm trying to tell you here is that yes, it's true. She had a father that had the resources, even if not necessarily money, but he had the intellectual resources, and he had the mindset and the tunnel vision to do something to take his daughter and to make her the best. And you have a lot of people who will never be able to do it because they never had access to education.
But that's only if you agree on the principle
On the principle of what?
that you make geniuses.
Yeah, no. What I'm saying is that no, I still believe that there are some people who are born with some incredible gifts, but also at the same time, I do believe that most people got potential, and a lot of them will never be able to fulfill their potential
Correct.
because there are not enough resources or there is not time. Even in organized society like here, first world society,
Mm.
people are so much grinded by the machine, as we spoke about it last time. I don't think they have the time to actually develop the right skills. But let's go to societies which are in worse shape and condition. They definitely won't have the chance to do it
No.
because they won't have their father homeschooling them, and teaching them how to do. By the way, also by repetition. Coming back to other things that
Yeah.
we went,
Yeah.
because Judith Polgar, Magnus Carlsen,
Yeah.
who is the greatest chess player today, and some people argue the best ever.
Right.
He said that for him, Judith Polgar is the outcome of great practice, not natural gifts. He can see it, you understand? He
Mhm.
can see the repetitions, he can see the studies, the education,
Yeah, I understand.
this, you understand, this strong disciplined lifestyle that her father made sure that she will go through. And what I'm trying to say is that yes. So not everyone, most people are not going to have the resources or the chances.
Yeah, which is actually in a way quite not depressing, but depressing
It is
because because who knows what we're missing out on.
absolutely. Look, you might have some Albert Einsteins, some Gauss, some Eulers, who knows, around the world, coming from terrible places and living in places where they will never have the chance. It's coming. Look, someone like Ramanujan. Ramanujan
Yeah,
came
also.
from poverty.
Yeah.
He had a book. He managed to put his hands on one book of mathematics. By the way, I got a copy of it.
When you say semi-poverty,
No,
he wasn't living in the slums.
he was pretty poor. I don't know what is where I've heard about the slums. I've seen the slums as well on videos, but he came from pretty poor. He had
Okay.
no. They said about him that he had no paper, I think, to write his ideas. Someone actually made a comment on YouTube. He says,
Yeah.
"I got tons of paper and I got no brain." No, he was limited by resources. Trust me. He had one book.
No, I'm not saying he wasn't limited resources, but I don't think he was in the slums. I'm not sure.
Yeah, but he was limited by resources. Trust me, he didn't have coming back to it, privileges of
Yes.
what people have today. He didn't have, today everyone got their phones, they got this, they got that. They're in much better place when it comes to actually ability to gain knowledge.
Yeah.
And today with a mobile phone, you can learn everything if you're living in the most remote and poverty-stricken
Yeah.
place. But I wonder
It's
if
funny because I was walking down the road and I saw this beggar, and he was on the floor on Kilburn High Road.
okay.
I saw him, and he's busy there, all the bandaged up. And what is he on speaking the latest iPhone?
No.
Eh?
And my mobile phone is broken.
No, but I'm just saying it's so funny.
Not that I got
I'm
money.
saying phones now are not considered a luxury item anymore.
Yeah, it's not. No,
It's just part of having bread.
but it is. But it's very interesting. You can gain if you go on the internet, you can actually become extremely educated. You don't need university. Don't need
Especially
anything.
with ChatGPT.
What? Sorry. I
ChatGPT.
heard about it. Yeah, everyone's talking about
You
artificial
haven't
intelligence.
tried it yet?
No, I haven't tried it. I got no patience. Look,
One second.
Okay.
1 second. When you say you got no patience, you don't understand what window you are not opening for yourself.
I play chess against Stockfish, so I saw this.
This could be the end of Google. You know Google, where they said will never die.
Yeah.
You can, when you want to when you want to research a subject, what do? You go into Google and you go into ChatGPT and you write, I don't know, who do you want to write? Rembrandt.
Yeah.
Write Rembrandt. It will give you a beautifully, takes the whole internet, make what's false, what's true, and gives you whatever you need.
Okay, no,
It's taking on Google.
I'll try it. My brother speaks a lot about it. I can tell you.
Most people are using it now.
I'm not saying this. Yeah, he's experimenting with it. Okay, I'll try it. I did actually experiment with some prototypes of it. I think you can call it prototypes. My brother sent me some chats and I made some experiments. I asked him questions.
Mm-hmm.
There was this Google engineer, that he was with Lambda. That was a big controversy not too long ago. That he said that he was testing this program that's supposed to be I think some sort of ChatGPT and AI, and he said that it's sentient. He said, "Oh yeah, I found it. It shows me consciousness." By the way, I had the chance to.
I don't know what that means.
Sentient, that it's conscious,
What? Oh, that the AI is conscious.
It's conscious. I read by the conversation between them because they published the conversation. He got himself not fired, but I think
Why?
Not fired. No. Because he was not supposed. I think he has a contract with them that there is certain information that you are not supposed to disclose. Well, I'm not an expert on the details of it, but I read the conversation between them, and it seems like that I didn't see any consciousness there. That's my opinion.
Whether there's conscious or not, but it was funny because there was a video going around where they asked I think it was ChatGPT or something, or another thing to AI, what do they think of human beings? And it basically said that they need to get rid of them because they are cancer to the world.
I think it applies very well to all these post-apocalyptic visions of a Terminator.
Yeah, but also listen, it's controversial when it comes to ChatGPT because obviously the people behind it could have an agenda, and that's why I saw that Elon Musk is also creating another one called, I think it's calling it Truth GPT or something like that, Truth AI or something like that, because obviously everything is all about agenda. But that's a different conversation for another time. I just want to stick to this idea of merit, non-merit, birthright, king, coronation. How do we look at people? Um, you know, and these challenges that we have, like when we speak about equality, right? Or we should be, like people say, we need equality in society, we need financial equality, and all these things are very important. They're extremely important, because I think that we're losing all this talent without, equality. Some people leave capitalism. Well, sorry, I don't know much about capitalism, but there's two school of thoughts about capitalism. One is you let the markets run, an opportunity for everybody, and then, which sounds very nice, but I don't think it practically works for everybody, right?
I'm listening to you. I'm listening.
Yeah. I just think that there's a lot of people that are in certain positions in their lives, and they think that they've achieved it themselves, and that comes with a certain arrogance, and it's terrible. And they have this arrogance, and you can't, and they believe it's all their achievement. They believe that they've done everything themselves, and actually they've been born all their different privileges, and there's a lot of that out there, and that's why they come along, and that's why I believe that's why there's no equality in the world. That's why they don't see the idea of charity. The idea of giving charity is because we know that in I don't know if it's actually in the code of Jewish law or somewhere. It says that we have a tradition, when you give charity, you have to give, we say you give 10%, right? And that 10%, it's brought down in, I think, in Kabbalah, Chassidut, or these works, that 10% is not yours. You don't own that 10%. That's 100% God's 10%, and therefore you should have no I mean, when somebody should ask you to give, you should just give. You shouldn't make well, I don't like you, I like this. I earned this money there, therefore I can decide who I should give the money to. This type of attitude, because it's not your money to begin with. This 10% or 20%, whatever you commit. And I think that if people would just have this, while on the other hand, what did Moses say? There's something very interesting about Moses. It says, Moses was the most humble person in the world, right? Ever existed. Why? He was the leader. What are you talking about? He was like, how could he be so humble? What made him humble? And you think he didn't know he was a leader?
No,
He knew.
but I think that you say what made him, he's the leader, so how can you be humble? Well, I think that in the Torah it's very important that because you are humble, you become the leader. I think that today the way that we view society and the way that our perspective about things are not really Torah in many ways. So that's the reason why you expect the leader to be some arrogant, detached individual. God picked him because of his qualities as a human being.
Yeah, but what quality did he have that made him humble? I mean, he was in the highest of high position in he was a leader of 3 million people.
Yes.
So the Torah explains what he did was that, yes, do you think he didn't know his greatness? He knew exactly his greatness. He knew he was a great person. He knew he had all these achievements and all these talents and etc. etc. And if you think about it, even him had some form of birthright that he became a leader. He was the great grandson of Levi. Also, no. So it says over there, what he used to do was, he used to look at people and say, if they had my talents, they'd be better than me. That's what made him, where he realized that the talents and his achievements were not his own. They were because God had mercy for some reason and gave him those talents to shine. And I think this is very much lacking in society now, Itai. Extremely. You see people who they honestly believe with their whole heart that they have the fact that they are living in a certain place at a certain time with a certain amount of money in their bank balance, in their banks, it's all because of them.
Yes.
And the same thing, not just with money, the same thing is with intelligence, with intellect, with universities, with professors, with every single person. The fact that somebody can come out and have an opinion about somebody else that, to the negative, right, is because of this is what I believe and this is what I think.
Yes, I'll tell you something. It just made me think about. I was thinking about it, and I mentioned to you Delacroix and Géricault. They came from time when there was some sort of enlightenment, a and you age and you hope for something different because again the French Revolution got rid of the Bourbon royalties, they call them the kings, the people who actually come by blood, and they don't care about the people.
Bourgeoisie, what do they call it?
Well, that's the thing. What happened is that someone like Beethoven, he wrote, I think, his third symphony, Eroica, and he dedicated it to Napoleon. Listen, and Napoleon represented the new kind of leader. He is the enlightened leader. He's going to really free the
Even
people.
though he tried to become an emperor, he did become an emperor.
That's the thing. That's what happened. No, but
it's interesting.
But the point, that was about merit. Okay, so that's the man of merit.
Yeah.
He judges you by your abilities, by your skills, and by your talents. This is how he wants you to be close to him because of that. Okay, but then Beethoven at certain point decided to erase it. He said, "I'm not dedicated it to him at all because he's just going to be he's becoming like the predecessors. You know, he's exactly like them. It's all the same." So we have to be careful with these things. I'm all for merit, by the way. I don't understand. For me, this bloodline means nothing unless, again, it's godly. I don't look at this coronation as a godly thing. I'm not taking too much interest in that, but for me, it's not a godly thing. So for me, it doesn't mean much why someone is there because of bloodline. Definitely, like I told you, even when it comes, not even when it comes to sports, when it comes to anything, take mathematics as a good example. This is one of the most of the purest forms of human artistry, if you want to call it this way. I don't know. I'm trying to find the right word for that because all you need to be a mathematician is your mind. That's it. I mean, someone can be locked inside a basement, be completely isolated and be a great mathematician. You don't need computers. You don't need anything. You don't just need maybe a piece of paper and a pen to write ideas. That's it. You don't even need that. So it's all about the human qualities of someone. It's not about how many machines you got, how much budget are they going to give me? Oh yeah, I need to do my research. Let's say someone who is into, let's say, quantum physics. Oh yeah, but I need to build the particle accelerators that it costs trillions.
Right.
Okay, so how can I? You don't need this. That's the reason why I like mathematicians. That's the reason why I like chess players, because you don't need. Magnus Carlsen tell you something about him. They did a little film with him. You can find it on YouTube. And some sort of like In My Crib. You remember MTV used to have this show when they show the houses of the super rich celebrities. I never watched it. I saw some pieces of it. It's really boring to me. But they took Magnus Carlsen, and his place looks basically so empty. There is nothing about it that will actually give away the fact that he is a multimillionaire. But the interesting thing about it was that he had a chessboard somewhere there on the wall. So immediately the guy with the camera asked him, is this something very special? Is it an historical event? This chessboard belongs. So he said, no, it's something I bought on a second-hand shop. He bought it in one of these Oxfam's equivalent, probably costing £2. And so he said, because I needed it, I don't know, for some sort of for a video, for YouTube. So he asked, so the guy was a bit confused, baffled. He said, well, really? He said, yeah. He said, well, chess is in my head. I don't need it. He said, I play it online. It's in my head. I don't need a chessboard. I don't need anything. Basically, put him on a deserted island.
He'll be survived.
That's, for me, perfection on a human level. So, of course, I prefer that. You see my great admiration for the human ability. Not for materialistic achievements or for materialistic aids. I don't see, by the way, a lot of these people that you're talking about, the rich class, or people who can also afford formal education, for me, they are not becoming any much smarter because of the fact that they become probably indoctrinated and become dumber and much blunter. They become blunt vessels. They don't have enough engagement with reality, and they don't use enough critical thinking. A lot of nations that didn't have, necessity is the mother of all inventions. They say so. When they have to actually work out for that, they come with some brilliant, innovative things. So there are many ways to look at the subject, but I definitely agree with you that we are losing a lot of talent, and I don't even know if there is any solution for that on a global level, but we do lose a lot of talent because there are people who will never be able to afford it. By the way, just another point before I let you continue. India, as you know, it's a place with a great population. How many? They got more than a billion?
I think they surpassed China now.
Yes.
People.
And many people, I believe, live in poverty. They don't live
Absolute
Yes.
horrible.
So
And they got nuclear weapons. It's terrible.
yeah, and you know what? You have Vishwanathan Anand, who's a great chess world champion. He's still playing. He's still actually rated pretty high. I think he's even within the top 10, and he's past 50, which is incredible. But before him, India never had a world champion. But they have they're the country who actually invented the game, or in India or Persia. I mean, they got such a long history with the game, and they have people in villages that we will never know about, and they can be the greatest chess players in the world. So because of Anand, you see today a lot of young people are getting more
Getting in.
attentions from India, and some of them are really incredible. I think the youngest grandmaster in the world is Indian, maybe 12 years old.
Yeah.
And so this is amazing to see it. And there was a guy. I'm sorry that I'm just continuing, but it's
No, it's
fascinating. There was a guy by the name of Sultan Khan, they called him,
Mhm.
a Pakistani man in India, before they separated, before the independence, okay? And he was a servant. And I think he was even illiterate. He couldn't read and write.
Mhm.
But he had such a tremendous talent for chess. His master taught him some chess,
Mhm.
and he showed such a brilliant talent that one day he said, okay, I'm taking him to England to show off my talent, my guy, this guy is a servant. He brought him, and he played against. They met Churchill as well. I think they met the elite of society, the elite of society. But listen to this: Capablanca, Jose Raul Capablanca, who is one of the most revered and admired world champion in history, natural talent, incredible player. He saw Sultan Khan playing, and he said, "I've never seen a natural talent like that," and that was Capablanca.
Wow.
So, but think about it. So, how many people like that can get lost under the radar?
Thousands. Yeah.
Millions. Who
Yeah.
knows?
And you know something also very interesting? In 300 years ago, before the Baal Shem Tov, we had that same issue in the Jewish community. Do you know that? We had the same issue. Why? Because a lot of people were poor, and if you were wealthy, right, you would find Torah learning and Torah studies in Poland and parts of Russia were selected for, if you want to call it, the intellectuals. What can I say?
Okay.
And if you were poor, if you grew up in a family which didn't have the means to send you to yeshiva, right? You wouldn't go. You'd have to work when you were 13, 14, 15, 16. You just couldn't.
Okay.
So, if you're a little bit well off and you could send your son to yeshiva, then to the study, then they could study, and then they'll be able to marry a girl from a rich father-in-law, or father-in-law, who would pay for you to study more. So a lot of we also were infected by this disease in the Jewish world.
Tell me how the Baal Shem Tov changed it. I'm very interested.
There used to be no, because there was I'll tell you.
Okay, so
I don't know if he changed it per se. Well, what he did was, first of all, he showed something very interesting. He changed the perspective that when he first came onto the scene, there was a huge. It was just after a couple of years after, more than a couple of years, to Tach V'Tat. You ever heard of Tach V'Tat?
Oh wow, of course.
Six. What's it? What happened in?
It's Ukraine.
Yes, 17.
Khmelnytsky.
Khmelnytsky, yeah. Where they literally proportionately, from a percentage point, from a percentage point of view, some argue it was worse than the Holocaust. Of how many people died.
The level of, I don't know, it was, I mean, everything, the Holocaust, it was as bad. The level of tortures and evil and satanic behavior that was going on there is unbelievable.
So they just slaughtered them. Absolutely. So what happened was, after the whole scenario of them, they caught Khmelnytsky, etc., etc. The Jews were very, very scared to live apart from each other, because if they figured that if we're much stronger in groups. So what happened was they started to congregate like in real shtetls, and then what happened was that in one town you'd have 25 tailors. Now one town can only support one tailor.
Okay.
So what would happen to the other tailors? So people were very, very poverty stricken, and because it just the competition for. So what did he do was, the first thing he did was, when he became wherever he was or on the verge, he started to encourage Jews to spread out, to go to other towns, find more opportunities. And then once he was able to do that, and because he said that you can't spiritually awake people if they are starving. You can't. They have to have the physical means. But then he took the perspective like this. He kind of, what he did was that he started to educate the people that what makes a good son-in-law, if you want to call it that, from the rich parents, is not necessarily the person who learns Torah, the intellectual who has the ability. That doesn't make a better Jew. It could be that you're a better Jew and a better person if you actually, do the mitzvahs and go out and work and bring spirituality in your work life. It's probably greater than learning Torah. And he turned that over the head, because before that they thought if you're not learning Torah, you're not a good Jew. You understand? So therefore, if you're trying to look for a son-in-law for your daughter, well, who do you look for? The best Jew, which is the student.
I like the fact, by the way, that you judge again, it doesn't make you a better human being or a better Jew. But I like the fact that actually a father-in-law would prefer a Talmid Chacham, a good student to be. That's very incredible. That's very deep. I think
this
is very profound.
Yeah, but does that
it doesn't make him a better Jew? But you know what?
I'm saying, what are you after? Are you after? Well, what's the goal? Is the goal to be? Well, until the Baal Shem Tov, the goal was that the idea was that you want the best Jew for your daughter.
Yes,
that's what you want. The best, the star, the one that.
And the Jew consider is the Talmid Chacham, is the wisest.
Yeah, exactly, the one that learns Torah, because he's always kavod la Torah. It's a halach in Shulchan Aruch that you have to give kavod la Torah if you know Torah. But the problem is it breed a lot of arrogance, and they weren't the best of Jews.
I understand.
It reminds me.
They say something about Balaam and Avraham. No, the students of this one and the student of that one. Do you think there is anything to do with
Students of what?
Balaam and the students of Abraham. They say about that you can have two groups of students, both of them are going to be incredible in their knowledge, but not necessarily
in their devotion to, in their humility.
Exactly.
Yeah, no. So he turned the whole thing over, and he started to show that actually the Jew who has to go out to work, or is poverty stricken and doesn't have the ability to learn, and he comes to shul just on Friday night, and he says a few words, and he's totally distracted about all mundane things, but he gives a few 5-10 minutes, that's more important to God than the guy who sits in, and it caused huge controversy, because you had this whole organization called
and I believe a lot of
people because the whole of Jewish society. They built it upon this idea that Torah is the main thing. What makes you a good Jew is Torah, and now you have this great rabbi coming along and flipping the whole thing that you can have Torah, but doesn't make you a good Jew.
Yeah, that's good.
And then what that did was eventually it turned it. Now that when he was able to re-educate and re-decodify the rich father-in-laws, they weren't just looking for a Talmid Chacham anymore, and therefore if you want to call it, the wealth was dispersed, and therefore more people were able to go to yeshiva.
I see.
You understand? So
makes sense. Yeah.
But the refocus on the fact that the Jew himself is something important, and this, that the peasant, actually can achieve the most, was a radical way of thinking.
No, that's great, and I can only agree with it. I do like the idea that Talmid Chacham, a wise student, is highly regarded. That I can tell you, because most societies will regard the son-in-law, oh yeah, he got money.
Yeah,
understand?
Correct, and a lot of it was purely done on where you were born. Obviously, there were a few exceptions, but in general, it's like if you were born in a wealthy family, you were going to yeshiva. If you were born in a blacksmith family,
you were going to blacksmith. No, I'm very interested. I'm very appreciative of the knowledge. Yes.
Yeah, but so there's knowledge from a Jewish perspective. Knowledge is important, but it doesn't make you the best Jew.
No, I understand that. I got a question, because I know about the rabbi, but isn't it by blood as well? The lineage of the rabbi coming from or connection or blood?
No, it's a good question. So in general,
how much of it is by merit?
Okay, that's a very good question. So the first, so the Baal Shem Tov, the Baal Shem Tov, he had a son. But he did not. He became when the Baal Shem Tov passed away, everybody said, well, he was very talented. And he wasn't like a ragamuffin. He was a very, very, very talented, and he became rabbi. He became the next in line, but he just was ruining the movement. He just because he just didn't know how to run it, and he actually abdicated
Okay.
because he had a dream of his father, and his father was the Baal Shem Tov, came to him and said to him that there's a bear in the field, and he was referring to his student, the Maggid of Mezrich, who
Oh,
was Dov Bear, the bear in the field. Yeah.
amazing. You
So
spoke about him last time.
yeah, so then everybody wanted to make everybody realized that he's the one, and when he took over, the movement started to flourish again because he was a rightful leader.
Almost been married.
That was by
But
merit.
since then,
And so then we have the same thing. So then we had, if you look at from the Chabad lineage, so then after the Maggid passed away,
Mhm.
there was after the Maggid there was another his son, but they created this thing. He never became, if you want to call it Rebbe. After he passed away, all the students they created this committee called the Chevra Kadisha,
Mhm.
and this Chevra Kadisha, that's what they called themselves. They said, okay, you go to this town and you'll be the leader of that town. You'll go to that. So they all became independent leaders, all the students of the Maggid. Yeah. So we have the Alter Rebbe, the Balatani. He went to Liozna. He went to his town in Russia, White Russia. He became the Rebbe of these. So each one became their own Rebbes to teach the masses. And then I can only speak of Chabad because I don't know about anybody else. The Alter Rebbe actually had two students. He had a student and he had a son.
Okay.
And the student was called the Strashela, and the son was called Dov Bear, same as the Maggid. And the reason why it's called Dov Bear, that's a different scenario, was because he only had daughters. He only had daughters, and then he went to his rabbi, which was the Maggid. And the Maggid, and he kept on asking for children, for a son, for a son, for a son. Eventually, at the end of days, just a year before the Maggid passed away, he said to me, "I'll have a son, please name him after me." And then that's what happened. Now, these two personalities, his son and the Strashela, one was a student, one was a son. After the Alter Rebbe passed away, they both merit. They both were of the same caliber to merit.
One of them was by blood.
One of them was by blood, and one of them was by student.
Yeah. Okay. But
So,
very
yeah,
talented
no,
as
they
well.
were very talented. Now,
This is another thing. I think just I'm not going to stop. I'm really interested in listening. I'm really interested in listening to you. But sometimes you can have people who come from very strong lineage and they got great talent as well.
yeah,
It can exist as well.
no, it does exist. I'm not saying it doesn't exist.
No, I know.
Yeah,
Just
yeah,
this is
100%.
pretty things
Yeah, because when you grow up among these
trivial.
people, then as you said, which obviously, when if your father is such a genius, the chances are you'll also be,
Yeah, exactly.
so it definitely does. It doesn't mean anyway. So I'm not saying that we have the answers to all the questions.
No,
We can
it's
just bring
okay.
out the controversy.
It's okay.
The problem is that, and they each understood the Alter Rebbe differently.
Okay.
They the myth the his son Dov Ber, right? He understood what the Alter Rebbe wanted, based on his teachings, and he said this way, and they split down the middle, right?
Mhm.
Because he had his way on how to understand Alter Rebbe, and he had his way, and majority of the students flocked to the son.
Okay.
That he so what merited him to become Rebbe was the students flocking here, even though the Alter Rebbe wanted his son to be the next leader. But even if the Alter Rebbe wanted his son, that the students would have flocked to the Strashela, the chances of the Strashela would have been this way. But the people just by as we're going to call it, by essential pulled here.
Mm.
So the Strashela left and he became a Rebbe somewhere else, and now you don't hear of them. You don't hear of any of it. There's no Chassidus following him. It just didn't continue.
Mhm.
So we could see in hindsight that the choice of the people actually, and then you have he had daughters, and actually the grandson of the Alter Rebbe, the Tzemach Tzedek, I mean his son-in-law then became the next. Same thing. Yes, it was blood and everything, but each one of these opposed being the next Rebbe. They never They never wanted to be it. It was just by osmosis. People just flocked to them.
Yes.
And we had the most interesting story.
So is it the fault of the people? I mean,
Not the fault of the
no,
people.
I'm not.
If they weren't, it's not like
Is it that the people are fallen? They create this illusion. And by the way, I'm not saying it
you
will.
can call it, yeah.
And this, no, I'm not saying necessarily in this case. But is it that you see people allowing themselves to be at the echelons of society by blood? Is because the people are just allowing them this opportunity? Or
No, okay, it's a good thing. It's a good question. But the people are the one that dictate who's the next leader because they can see what's real and what's not real. They flock. They're the ones. It says there's no king without a nation. That's the principle. So the fact that, the fact that they they gravitated to this, that means they saw something there, whether their soul saw it, whether they picked up on it, that this is the next leader. Yes, the other guy is very talented, and I'll give an example. By our Rebbe, right? Obviously, the talents that he had, there were, out of all the people, he had the most. He had the most talents across the board from all just regular people. Even though he was in the family. But I'll tell you something interesting: is that he was the second son-in-law. So if it was just by blood, the first son-in-law should have been the leader. So the same thing over here. You had two individuals. You had two son-in-laws, you know, and he was the elder son-in-law. So if you go just by blood, the elder son-in-law should have been the next leader. But the people didn't gravitate to him because he didn't have it. He just didn't have that righteous pull that he had. So the people are the one that do dictate. There was a certain one of the students also, the people wanted him to be Rebbe, and he became Rebbe for like a short time, and he was gifted with all these different things, and he said, I don't want to be Rebbe anymore. Not Chabad, because it's just too intense. The responsibility and what you get from being a leader, when people choose you.
very special character.
So I'm saying it's not like
it's not just about being great,
but you see, it's about the people choosing. It's about the people choosing. It's not, if the Rebbe would have gone up, if any leader of the ones that I mentioned, and there's many different stories. I mean, we have the third Chabad Rebbe had, I think, 7 or 10 children, and the one who actually became Rebbe was the younger son. Not they all had to leave. So it's just the people gravitated, or they said, okay, the younger son is the one that's carrying on the essential message. The other ones are not, and so, and even though the leader before would have chosen, said, I want you to be, it's got nothing to do. I mean, essentially, yes, you can choose, but it's all about the people. We have to choose, So, which I think is a little bit different, in my opinion, than someone saying, oh, well, I lived in this manner and I am the heir to this, therefore now I'm the Lord. You understand? It's a little bit different.
Natural.
It's my natural, exactly.
Natural right.
It's my natural right.
Yes, I think it's important also to say, and I'm just relating to you, that if someone comes, is actually got his status by blood, and yet can show the talent and the human quality, there is no reason to cancel or to
100%.
decline.
100%. Now, I'm not saying that's wrong.
No, I'm not saying you do. I think it was the Swedish queen who actually, you remember René Descartes, the mathematician, philosopher, Frenchman, and I think that he had the story I read once. I remember it was actually a bit funny. We used to speak about it, me and a friend of mine, an Israeli friend of mine. I used to tell her that. And Descartes apparently passed away. They said that it was just too difficult for him because he was overworked by the queen, by the Swedish queen, because she was such an ambitious woman. She wanted to know everything. And they said, I think they had a schedule, a routine. It was so demanding. I think that she used to work on developing her skills something like 17 hours a day. She was obsessed with bettering herself, at least on, I don't know, not necessarily spiritually or morally, but from human perspective, from human quality, from skill point of view. And Descartes apparently passed away because he couldn't handle it anymore. She overworked the poor guy, and he was one of the greatest. I will not even say scientists, mathematicians, minds, philosophers of modern time. So, but you see this. But she was very ambitious. So it was not just for her. It was not just about, oh yeah, I'm queen.
Yeah.
I can do whatever I want. I can get dressed all day.
Yeah, and by the way, that we see that when it comes to the high priest, The high priest, it's son after son. That means
Yes, let's talk about
unless
how can you
unless his
become the high
son,
priest
and well, it's you have
in the temple in the
in the
days
temple.
of the
So we had
temple.
Aaron, right? He was the first one, and then he appointed his older son. Yes, that's how it works. It's from son to son. But if his son's not or doesn't want, I think if he doesn't want to take it on or something, or he's not the best, I think it can go to somebody else. But there was a lot of times in the, you know, a lot of times where they used to, people bought the privilege to be the high priest, and they used to die in the Kodesh HaKodashim, in the Holy of Holies, every Purim. Yeah, that's why they used to tie strings to them
Today, I don't know.
and pull them out,
They can pull them.
because if they were, if you know, because obviously if it's not bloodlined, very much bloodlined, you know, son, then they would lose it. Then they would die. They would literally, and they would go in knowing that they would die. How crazy is that?
I think you mentioned it in the past. It's very interesting.
Yeah, it's a very interesting thing. But there is, if you want to call it, there is merit to bloodline, and there is merit to talent, and they're both super important. The problem is that when it's by bloodline, you have when it's mixed in with arrogance. I have no issue with bloodline. It's just the arrogance that I have an issue with.
There is also, I think, there is also possibility that someone achieved somewhere in the lineage some great achievements and became a ruler or very dominant, very prominent person, and then his sons and his grandsons and a few generations after became very weak-minded, weak character. It happens a lot, and then they got nothing to actually justify their status.
You know, the Maggid we spoke about, the Maggid, there's a story about him, very interesting story, where there was a fire in the house. Yeah. And the mother was crying, you know? So you asked her, why are you crying? It's just whatever, it's just mundane things. You don't understand. We had lineage. I had in the house a paper which showed our lineage goes all the way back, you know? You know, our yuchsin, as it's called. How do you say that? Our yichud, as we call it. How do you translate it?
No, I understand lineage. You can call it
lineage. Is some prominent rabbis, all these different things. You know, now we don't. Now we've got nothing.
Yeah, cannot prove it to people.
We can't prove it. We have garnished. Now there's a whole section in halacha about yuchsin, about lineage. You know, so you know, someone comes along and they say they're a kohen, a priest. Do you? And you have no proof for it. Can you treat them as a kohen? There's many different halachot. If someone walks into the shul, they're Jewish. Do you believe them? Yeah. By the way, before I carry on the story, Jewish also is all by blood. You know, if your mother's Jewish, you're Jewish. You're respected.
Unless you're converted.
Yeah. So it's yeah. But that's what I'm saying. The difference between a spiritual, like an essential, you want to call it attribute, as opposed to one that's needs action. You know, like earning money, you need to do an action.
That's why I told you that it's a bit difficult for me to argue it. I'm not even sure if I want to argue it. Why someone can be a priest in the temple and I cannot?
Yeah, exactly.
It's something. It's beyond me.
I'll tell you something else, even interesting. Just before I get back to the story, is that we had a couple of weeks ago we spoke about Torah. You know, Torah, like a blemish you'd get if you'd speak ill about somebody. Tzara, yeah. So there's a very interesting halacha from Rambam, which is the most beautiful halacha, and it says like this: that the only person that can decree if this
kohen, no,
only a kohen, right? It's only a kohen that's allowed to say whether it's pure, impure,
because it's a spiritual contamination, right?
Right. Now, what happens if the kohen doesn't know any of the laws? And the big rabbi, the chief rabbi of Israel, I don't know. Think about even the Rebbe, right? The big Chabad Rebbe who is, let's say, he's not a kohen. He was Israel, right? And they stand, but he wasn't a posek, so we can't really use him. Let's call him Rabbi Landau. One of the big Chacham, I don't know, Rabbi Vadia Yosef, and they're standing next to each other. One knows nothing. One's a peasant. He's probably been broke Shabbos. I don't know if he broke Shabbos, but he doesn't know anything. He's as thick as a, I don't know how to put it, thick as a brick,
yeah, thick as a brick.
He's more interested in watching the clouds move than to read a book. Yeah? And he's the only kohen in town. And the big Talmud Chacham, gross, right? A guy comes to the thing, right? So he shows his arm, right? So the rabbi looks at it, and he cannot say where, and according to all the ramifications, it's Tomei.
Mm.
And the rabbi cannot
Cannot-
say the one that's Tomei. You know what he has to do? He has to tell the Kohen, he say, listen, according to all the halachot,
Mhm.
this is Tomei. And the Kohen has to be the one that says, okay, this is Tomei, then it becomes Tomei. But until the Kohen says it can't be Tomei. Which is a very interesting halakha. No? So back to the story. By the way, that's the whole idea is why it's a kohen. There's something inherently inside a kohen which not everybody has, which comes from blood, which comes from birth after birth, which is this idea of love. That means you can't make somebody tomei, look at somebody as being impure unless without love. It has to come with love. If it doesn't come with love, you'll make everybody impure. But that's a different discussion.
Okay.
No, so she's crying. So you know what he said to his mother? The Maggid said to his mother, he said, "Don't worry, mother. I'm going to create a new lineage."
Very good. He's right about
And that's
that.
what he did.
Yeah.
He did. He absolutely did, which is an amazing thing.
No, sure. I'm a big believer in merit and talent. Yes, yes, it's good. I think that's the way to do things. And I told you, human achievements are very important to me. But again, you know, can as we spoke about, you can come from a bloodline and justify your status.
Just as well.
Exactly. Yes.
Okay, Itai?
Okay. We had a good discussion, I think.
Very good.
Until
See you
next time.
too.